Hi guys, welcome back to another video. Firstly, thank you very much for subscribing and all your kind comments and likes. It is much appreciated. So far we've made a few videos around the old Panasonic G9 and sort of unpacked what it is that camera has to offer, and we've tweaked some settings to make us a bit more efficient when it comes to getting to the different parts of the camera. So if you haven't, I encourage you to please check out those videos. It is definitely helpful and handy. I'm quite excited to get into this series of videos now, because now we're going to get into a bit of composition and the elements that make up composition. It's going to be a huge topic, but something I'm really keen to get stuck in. So now when it comes to composition, the most obvious place to start is the exposure triangle. And we all know that that consists of our shutter speed, our aperture, and our ISO. But I want to expand on that a little bit, and I want to bring two other things into the equation in a minute, because I think exposure forms part of a bigger triangle, which I'll, like I said, get to in a minute. So if you look at the three elements that make up the exposure triangle: aperture, shutter speed, and your ISO. Let's start off with your shutter speed. Yes, it does have a practical purpose in as much as the shutter closes and it allows X amount of light to come in, but that also lends itself to more of a creative opportunity. So slower shutter speeds create like a blurred look, which you often see with waterfalls and things like that, and you can even use it for light trails. So all three of these elements, although they serve a practical purpose, aperture is simply the constricting and expanding of the, similar to your eye and the iris or pupil that opens up to allow light to come in. That's all the aperture is. And that too, again, it serves a practical purpose, and you can also use it to add a creative flair to your photography. So people talk about aperture and a shallow depth of field. So when the aperture is really wide, your subject is crystal clear in focus and the background is nice and blurry. They call that bokeh, and it gives you that particular look. Even ISO, the sensitivity of the sensor, can be used for some particular look from a creative purpose, but it does have a practical use. You know, the sensitivity of the sensor changes if aperture and the shutter speed isn't meeting the exposure requirements. The very last thing we need to then adjust is our ISO. It's always shutter speed first, aperture, and then ISO is the last. So that's sort of a summarized version of what composition, as far as the exposure triangle goes, and getting our exposure right in its simplest form. I will eventually, I think, make specific videos around each one of those things, but for the time being, I think that's a half decent overview. Alright, so as I mentioned earlier, there's two other elements I want to introduce into like another triangle. We've got exposure sitting on the top. We know what our exposure is now, and we sort of got an idea what that is. But down at the base of our triangle here, I want to introduce two other things which I want you to sort of consider when you're looking at the thing holistically, because everyone's on about the exposure triangle. Yes, that is very important. However, if you look at your sharpness of the image, this is just as crucial. Exposure is going to bring the right amount of light to the equation. However, sharpness is going to make sure things are sharp, crisp, and in focus. And there's essentially two things that you have to consider when it comes to sharpness. One is, what is my focus setting? Am I using the best focus setting to capture the subject? And number two is my subject stationary or is my subject moving? All right. So that, in essence, also a summarized view of what sharpness is going to be about. I'm giving a very broad sort of look. There are other elements that will definitely come into play, the quality of your lens and all these other factors, how good the light is, and all that is absolutely going to contribute. But I'm just talking about 3 fundamentals that we got to look at and make sure we've got spot on. And then the other element is, for lack of a better word, it is composition, right? Have we composed that shot properly? You know, have we used the certain rules of thirds and all the other composing elements to make sure that that photo is as best as it can be? And then the final part of that composure equation is, are we quite happy enough to just shoot in JPEG and let the camera do the post-production for us? Or are we quite happy to shoot in RAW and then we add our own final tweaks to the product? So when you're going out into the field and you're looking at those 3 elements, right? Is my exposure right? Is my photo sharp? Have I composed it properly? And do I want to do work in post-production? Or am I quite happy with the camera doing the job? So that's sort of a summary of how I'm trying to sort of approach photography in its simplest form. Alright guys, I hope that sort of captures the gist of what I'm trying to express. If you've got any comments or questions, please drop them in there. We're all learning here. As I mentioned in my previous video, I'm going to start going out on field trips with a Panasonic G9, and I already did my first one this weekend. We went to a place here on the Gold Coast called Home of the Arts, HOTA, and it's a art exhibition place, very, very nice, very colorful, nice location, and I decided to take a few shots over there using the stuff we just spoke about, trying to nail my exposure, trying to get that you know, the shutter speed spot on, and just making sure that the sharpness is there. And then I'm shooting in RAW, so I'm not sure if I'm going to be doing any tweaking to these photos yet. I thought I'll just keep it like that for the time being, because the I suppose the post-production work is a whole new learning curve, one that I will eventually get to. So point being, I've gone out and I'll probably midweek do another little video just showing those, and I'll put the photo up with what the settings were, and you can comment to your heart's content. I've been using the Lumix kit lens that came with my G7. I realized I don't have, I think it's a 12 to 60 millimeter kit lens that comes with the G9. So I've just been using the 14 to 42 millimeter and testing what those results are going to be like, because like I said, I don't really want to go out and buy additional lenses when I haven't really put these lenses through its paces enough. Alright guys, I'm going to wrap it up there. I don't want these videos to go on for too long. Thank you very, very much for watching if you've made it to the end. Like I said, stay tuned for that field trip photos that I'm going to post. Please like this video or subscribe if you want to see more. As the name implies, aperture to zoom. I'm going to be unpacking in its entirety everything from aperture to zoom. And hopefully that resonates with you, and something that you will enjoy. Look guys, stay cool, keep moving forward, and onward and upward. Over and out. Cheerio. Bye bye.